Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things air pistol. So half the world is in lockdown, I'm in lockdown, and if you're watching this, you're probably in lockdown too. Many of us just can't get to a range right now. For those of us living in countries where it's legal to keep our air weapons at home, we're probably wishing that we had a garage large enough to set up some sort of improvised target system. But obviously, if you're living somewhere like central London, that's pretty difficult. But do we really need a range to keep ourselves in top shooting condition? I'm going to tell you why. All you really need is your pistol and the wall. And good lighting. I'm sure you know what dry firing is. It's going through the motions without releasing air or ammunition. If you've been to big competitions, you've probably seen shooters doing this before their match. Sometimes there's no designated dry firing area, and shooters can get pretty creative. I remember one time in Korea, before my match, I was actually dry firing outside a toilet because the designated area was outdoors and it was cold. But that was technically not allowed. And we shooters go to such lengths to dry fire because before a match it's crucial to remind our mind and body of the specific motions that we are going to execute. And we don't want to have the distraction of aiming. We just want to remind our mind and body of the routine. It's an internal exercise, and it's this internal focus that makes dry firing such an important part of training. If you're new to pistol shooting, you might think that all we do is come down, aim at a target, and pull the trigger when everything looks good. Now that might work for one shot, but to shoot 60 good shots, we have to develop a consistent routine that is practically the same for every single shot. Paradoxically, trying to aim for that perfect 10 more often than not actually disrupts our routine. And we're always tempted to deviate from our routine to try and aim a little more precisely. And the result is predictable. So how do we resist this temptation? Well, the most fundamental requirement is that our mind and body must have a very strong memory of our routine. And that is what dry firing without a target does. It strengthens our muscle memory of our routine. It's just like how martial artists go through their forms to build that kind of muscle memory that allows them to react without thinking. It's the same if you look at other sports. Professional footballers don't just play matches for training, they practice all sorts of different drills. And it's the same for all other kinds of athletes. We all break down our motions into smaller parts to practice. It's just more efficient to do it that way. In shooting, we only really have one routine to practice, but we do it at such a fine level that it's still helpful to break it up into aiming and non-aiming parts to train. So if you've been neglecting your dry firing, this lockdown is the perfect time to go back to basics. Now you may ask, what exactly should we be focusing on when we dry fire? Well, the answer is very simple. Just focus on whatever you want to improve on. If you want to improve your body stability, then focus on your legs and your core. If you want to focus on your trigger rhythm, then focus on your grip and your index finger. So your body is performing the same motions, but your mind is focusing on the feedback from a specific part of your body. And that's how you can get the most out of your dry firing. One practical problem you might have though is not being sure at what height to aim at. In this case, you can set up a horizontal line across your wall at 1.4 meters above the ground. 1.4 meters is the standard height of 10-meter targets, but since we are now much closer to the wall, the point where we should aim at is probably slightly higher than 1.4 meters. Now you can do the trigonometry to figure out the exact height at your target should be, which would be a function of your own height. But it's probably alright to just aim in the vicinity of 1.4 meters. But don't put a dot on your wall because that will defeat the whole purpose of not aiming. Also, try to find a brightly lit and pale coloured wall that will give you the contrast you need to focus on your sights. By the way, if dry firing is getting a bit too boring for you, you can switch it up by doing holding exercises, also known as strength training. So we execute the shot as per normal, but after triggering, we hold the position for a fixed length of time, and then rest for a fixed length of time. And then we repeat this for a few cycles. Depending on your strength level, you might go for a 30-30 or 40-20 or even a 60-30. So 60-30 would be 60 seconds hold and 30 seconds rest. And I'd say that if you can do 10 sets of 60-30 comfortably, you're probably set. But the really crucial thing about this exercise is to maintain your posture. When we're tired, it's easy for posture to slip. Shaking is fine, but if you find yourself leaning back or hunching your shoulders, then you need to get that under control. Because remember, we want to build up the muscle memory of the correct posture and the correct routine. However, just a note of caution, this is not an exercise to do too often, like say every training, because it's quite stressful for the elbow joint. So if you are just starting out and you find yourself getting a lot of pain in your elbow, you might want to do some exercises to strengthen your biceps first. Lastly, I just want to emphasize that dry firing is not just something we do when we can't shoot. It is in fact very complementary to live firing training. In my experience, this was emphasized a lot more by Chinese coaches, and when I was in the Singapore national team training under a Chinese coach, I would always start off my sessions with 20 to 30 minutes of dry firing at a blank wall. Besides being a physical warm-up, it was also a mental refresher of what I needed to do in that session. Now, of course, I had the luxury of unlimited range time, and I understand that it feels a bit wasteful to spend 20 to 30 minutes dry firing if you're paying for your range time by the hour. But just give it a shot. Even if it's 10 minutes, I'm sure you will see results. So to summarize, dry firing is a form of training that strengthens the muscle memory of a routine without aiming. It also provides an ideal environment to focus on improving or adjusting a specific part of our routine. It's best done with a brightly lit, pale-colored wall, and if necessary, a horizontal line at around 1.4 meters can aid in vertical positioning. And finally, it's complementary to live firing training. So thanks for listening. That's it for the importance of dry firing. I should be doing videos on aiming and grip shaping next, but let me know if there's anything else you'd like to know about.